Our gospel reading this morning is, as we already have heard, the story of Zacchaeus from the Gospel of Luke. It takes place, as does much of the second half of Luke, as Jesus journeys towards Jerusalem and the cross. Let us listen for what the Spirit would speak to us through these words. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through it. A man was there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd he could not because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him because he was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." So he hurried down and was happy to welcome him. All who saw it began to grumble and said, "He has gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner." Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Look, half my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much." Then Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and save the lost." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I was in Target the other day picking up a few small items. And for some reason, I detoured through the television section. I didn't even slow down as I passed the 26-inch and the 32-inch and the 40-inch screens. But I stopped at the 55-inch and the 70-inch models. Now, that would be nice. Think of the Super Bowl party you could have with a 70-inch television. That big screen called to me. But I went on to the checkout with my little basket of items. I wanted it, though. I wished I had it. I even felt a bit diminished by not having it, which isn't so surprising since I suffer from a disease endemic to our culture. I don't have a really bad case, but I still have consumeritis. Its chief symptom is always needing more in order to be happy. A new TV, a new car, a renovated kitchen, a new cell phone, smartphone, and on and on and on. But one of the problems with consumeritis is that getting more doesn't actually help. You still just need more. And it's true whether you're rich or poor. Regardless of incomes, people say that if they just had 20% more, then they would be happy. Now think about that. Wherever you are, whatever you make, whatever you have, there is someone that is certain she would be very happy if only she made what you make and have what you have. But of course, you know better. Now, consumeritis is a great spiritual malady of our age. It's also the cause of a great deal of our anxiety. It's certainly true that a bit of dissatisfaction can motivate people and drive people. But at some point, the endless striving for more becomes pathological. An addiction that cannot be sated. It leads people to stay in jobs they cannot stand, and it runs them ragged. It consumes people, damaging relationships, ruining health, and more. And as someone has said, we buy things we don't even need with money we don't even have to impress people we don't even know. Now, endemic consumeritis is a modern problem. But the disease itself has been around forever. No doubt Zacchaeus suffered from it. I mean, after all, he was willing to pursue wealth in a manner that left him hated and ostracized by his fellow Israelites. Chief tax collectors purchased their position from the Romans, becoming a part of Rome's hated occupation in the process. And beyond collaborating with the Romans, they got rich by collecting more taxes than were actually required and pocketing the surplus. So in other words, Zacchaeus is a traitor and a thief. Now I wonder what it was that drove Zacchaeus to seek wealth at such great cost. Surely there was some deep, unfilled need that drove him, but I suspect that it had not worked out quite as he had hoped. How else to explain the fact that he wants to see Jesus, that he's willing to even make a bit of a fool of himself in order to do so? And when he meets Jesus, everything changes. He's ready to give away half of all that he has and to repay quadruple anyone he has defrauded. Whatever it was that drove him to seek wealth no matter the cost, it is gone. And Jesus says that salvation has come to his house. Zacchaeus has been healed, made new, saved, made whole. Every fall, lots of churches hold their annual stewardship campaigns or pledge drives. And very often these are virtually indistinguishable from fundraisers on public television. Church leaders try to convince members suffering from varying degrees of consumeritis to donate a bit of incomes already stretched thin by mortgages and car payments and student loans and credit card bills and more. Now, most church people want to help out their church, but when they do the math, they discover that there isn't a whole lot to spare, and churches are lucky to get much over 1% of people's income, never mind the idea of a tithe or 10%. But when Zacchaeus is freed from his consumeritis, he joyfully begins to give away half that he owes and promises to repay 4 times over anyone he has cheated. This looks nothing like church stewardship. This is not about helping the synagogue meet its budget. Something is different here. Something is completely different. The encounter with Jesus has radically changed Zacchaeus. And many of us have had a similar experience. If not a religious one, then perhaps a romantic one. We have met someone, and that encounter has changed us. Suddenly, our lives are reoriented around that person, and extravagant excess is easy. Nothing is too good for our beloved. Money and things that were for me and for my enjoyment now are suddenly showered on another. Carefree, footloose individuals who could not be tied down or fettered in any way suddenly and joyfully long to settle down. It's a remarkable transformation. And it's exactly the sort of thing that happens to Zacchaeus. 25 years ago, if anyone had asked me if I was a Christian, I would have said yes. I mean, I belonged to a church and I went from time to time. but it certainly wasn't really central to my life. It was a habit I had acquired from my parents, and it was a comfortable enough habit if there was nothing else going on. But then I had a Zacchaeus experience. Now, it was nothing anywhere near so dramatic as what happens in the Scriptures. For some reason, I had begun to study the Scriptures a bit and to spend a bit of time in prayer and reflection. And somewhere in there, I encountered Jesus, and everything changed. I encountered something much more than a philosophy or a morality. I met God's love that sought me and wanted me. And it radically transformed my life. And in my case, it led to a career change. In many other people's cases, it has led to leading a new church ministry, to renewed relationships, to becoming a Sunday school teacher or a youth leader, to serving as an elder or deacon, and on and on. And encountering Jesus almost always unleashes extravagant generosity. Those who have been touched by God's love in Jesus are generous with their time and their gifts and their money. They're very often tithers and beyond. Now, I know that a lot of people think of tithing as a impossibly ridiculous extravagance, something they could never imagine doing. But for me, tithing is something born of love. It is something I cannot imagine not doing. It would be like not loving my wife or being faithful to her. In just a few moments, we will all be invited to come to the table where the risen Christ is our host. The portions of the meal we will receive are small, but make no mistake, there is spiritual banquet here. No matter who you are, Jesus longs to embrace you and to fill you to overflowing with God's love and God's grace. And when that happens, nothing's ever the same again. Thanks be to God.